Okay, so we start with the summary. And again, this is sort of, I guess, we have 4 portions left. So I think there are 12 portions in the book of Genesis. So this is the beginning of the last third. And the story now shifts to Joseph and his brothers. Of course, you have a little bit of the father, but the father is sort of in the background. And Joseph and his brothers, and the drama starts in this week, but it doesn't really, I guess, this parsha as well as next parsha both end with cliffhangers. It's not the end of the story. It's a sort of a middle of the story. And at this proportion, as we will see for Joseph, it gets worse and worse. And I guess the turnaround doesn't happen until next parsha. Okay, so let's go. Jacob settles in Hebron with his 12 sons. His favorite is 17-year-old Joseph, whose brothers are jealous of the preferential treatment he receives from his father, such as a precious many-colored coat that Jacob makes for Joseph. Joseph relates to his brothers 2 of his dreams, which foretell that he is destined to rule over them, increasing their envy and hatred toward him. Simon and Levi plot to kill him. In other words, the verse says the brothers wanted to kill him. Commentaries say, yes, that's true, but specifically we're talking about 2 of the brothers. But Reuven suggests that they throw him into a pit instead, intending to come back later and save him. While Joseph is in the pit, Judah has him sold to a band of passing Ishmaelites. The brothers dip Joseph's special coat in the blood of a goat and show it to their father, leading him to believe that his most beloved son was devoured by a wild beast. We're going to go back to Joseph in the last 2 paragraphs, but now the story takes a detour. And the story goes to Judah. So Judah marries and has 3 children. The eldest heir dies young and childless, and his wife Tamar is given in levirate marriage to the second son, Onan. So levirate marriage is if a person dies without children, his wife, one of his family members, are supposed to marry the widow. Once the Torah has been given, that mitzvah has been narrowed to not any one of the relatives, but to a brother specifically. But at that point, it's any relative. In any case, so now he has the brother marrying, the brother Onan marries his brother's widow, whose name is Tamar. Onan sins by spilling his seed, and he too meets an early death. Judah is reluctant to have his 3rd son marry her. Determined to have her child from Judah's family, Tamar disguised herself as a prostitute and seduces Judah himself. Judah hears that his daughter-in-law has become pregnant and orders her executed for harlotry. But when Tamar produces some personal effects he left with her as a pledge for payment, he publicly admits that he is the father. Tamar gives birth to 2 sons, Peretz, an ancestor of King David, and Zerach. So that's a fascinating story that amongst some of the questions that it raises is also the placement, why exactly the story is placed right in here, middle of the story of Joseph. But in any case, now we're back to the story of Joseph. Joseph is taken to Egypt and sold to Potiphar, the minister in charge of Pharaoh's slaughterhouses. God blesses everything he does, and soon he is made overseer over all his master's property. Potiphar's wife desires the handsome and charismatic lad. When Joseph rejects her advances, she tells her husband that the Hebrew slave tried to force himself on her and has him thrown into prison. Joseph gains the trust and admiration of his jailers, who appoint him to a position of authority in the prison administration. In prison, Joseph meets Pharaoh's chief butler and chief baker, both incarcerated for offending their royal master. Both have disturbing dreams, which Joseph interprets. In 3 days, he tells them, the butler will be released and the baker hanged. Joseph asks the butler to intercede on his behalf with Pharaoh. Joseph's predictions are fulfilled, but the butler forgets all about Joseph and does nothing to him. And nothing for him. So that's the story in short. If you think about the Parsha, it's almost sandwiched by dreams. In the beginning of the Parsha, you have Joseph's 2 dreams that causes the brothers to be jealous. The end of the Parsha, you have the 2 dreams of the baker and the butler, and actually that's when Joseph becomes not only a dreamer, but actually a dream interpreter. And of course, we know the end of the story. The next week is when Pharaoh has dreams, and Joseph rises to power by being the one who can interpret Pharaoh's dreams. So that is the story in short. A lot to talk about. If anyone wants to talk about something specific, let me know. Otherwise, we'll start from the beginning. We'll see where we end up. Go ahead, Vicky, please.
Thank you, Rabbi. You don't have to start, but I had a couple of questions. The first one, why those 2 brothers, Levi and forgot the other one.
Shimon and Levi.
Shimon, right. And the second question is, if Joseph knew that interpreting dreams unfavorable, that matters how we interpret dreams, although for the one who was executed, he interpreted it that way. Why did he do that? Or maybe he didn't know that it depends how you interpret it.
Yeah, so that's already, the second question is difficult. The first question is, how come the sages say that it was Shimon and Levi? So we know Reuven, the eldest one, the verse says explicitly that he did not want to kill. He wanted to bring him back, Joseph back to his father. The eldest brother knew that if something happens to Joseph, the father will ask him, the eldest one will hold him responsible. So the eldest one, as we will see, the eldest one tells them, let's not kill him, let's throw him into a pit. The brothers want to kill him. He says, let's throw him into a pit. And then for whatever reason, he's off the scene. And Judah is the one who says, why are we leaving him in a pit? Let's at least make a couple of dollars. Let's sell him. So Reuven is out. He's not the one that is responsible for trying to kill him, because you see clearly, the verse says clearly that he wanted to bring him back to his father. And so this assumption is that the younger brothers would not do it without the permission from the older brothers. Now, which older brother specifically? It probably is the sons of Leah, because the sons of Leah were probably the most jealous of Joseph. Because again, why does the father favor Joseph? It doesn't say. It says Kiben Skunim, because he's the youngest son, because he's a son born in his old age. But that's not exactly accurate, because he loves not his youngest son. He loves his second to youngest son. In other words, he loves Rachel's firstborn. Now, he's considering Joseph as his firstborn. Now, that is sort of overriding the position of the children of Leah. So we assume the children of Leah are older. We assume that the younger brothers wouldn't do anything without their permission or consent. And then we also assume that the ones who are most offended by the father honoring Joseph or favoring Joseph is the sons of Leah, not the sons of the maidservants. The maidservants had no expectation of being considered the firstborn. So I'm looking for the verse. The verse says like this. The verse says like this, verse 19, if you look at page 203. They saw him from afar, is verse 18. And when he had not yet approached them, they conspired against him to kill him. And they said to one another, Vayemru. They said to one another. Okay, that's fine. That could mean all the brothers spoke. But if you look at the Hebrew, it could mean all the brothers spoke. But if you read it really literally, it reads as follows. Vayemru, and they said, Ish man el achiv, to his brother. Doesn't say brothers. In other words, you could read it, one said to the other. And then the other said to the other. They keep each one, the conversation continues, but each one speaking to one person at a time. But if you read it literally, it's Ish el achiv, one man to his brother. So I'm pretty sure Rashi doesn't say anything, but I'm pretty sure that that's one of that's what the Talmud uses, the Medrash uses to say that it's referring to specifically two of the brothers, but also because the term man, Ish el achiv, In the previous parsha, we talked about how Shimon and Levi, second and third brother, killed the entire city of Shechem. So you see, these people also are a little bit violent, or a lot violent. So we could sort of assume that they have their hand in this desire to kill Joseph. Another scriptural source is that in that portion, where we talk about the killing of the people of Shechem, the verse says, the two sons of Jacob, Shimon and Levi, took ish charbo, each man his sword. So he uses the word man in the context of Shimon and Levi. So now when you say ish alachiv, man to his brother, that man reminds us of that story. So the point here is there's a lot of indicators that tell us that it's these two brothers. I don't know that one would do it alone, but because we know the history of these two brothers, that they went out and wiped out the entire city, and because we know that they're the eldest of the sons of Leah, who we can peg the story to, because certainly not Reuven. And the verse uses the term ish. So all that together lead the sages to say that it is the sons of, that is Shimon and Levi. The second question about the interpretation of the dreams is a little bit deeper. Maybe we'll wait a few minutes till we get there. But I want to say one thing, going back, since I mentioned Shechem, and this is a very, I'm not saying this conclusively. I haven't seen this in any of the classic commentaries, but today there's people are looking at this from more modern eyes, and they're seeing different interpretations. So I'm going to offer that as well. So I want to go to last week's parsha, to the story of Shimon and Levi. And the thesis is like this. Before we get to, let me just see if I can find it. Give me just 1 second. Okay, we didn't really talk about it at great length last year, and to be honest, we probably don't usually talk about it at so much length because of its placement exactly in the end of or in the middle of a very dramatic parsha of the scene of of the reunion between Yaakov and Esav. So it probably doesn't get them as much attention as it should get. But we're going to look back. I didn't intend to do this today, but I'll try to do this. I'll try to be brief. So this is the story. Dinah, daughter of Leah, whom she bore to Jacob, went out to look among the daughters of the land. Shechem, the son of Hamor, prince of the land, saw her, and he took her, lay with her, and violated her. And he so cleaved to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob. Okay. Then the father tries to convince Jacob and his brothers to marry Jacob and the brothers to allow him to marry Dinah. They are very upset. They turn out and they say, well, if you circumcise, then we will allow you to marry into our family. And the third day they go and they kill the entire family, then the entire city, which is a morally problematic story. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it's problematic. And all the commentaries that want to know how is it possible that this was done. Who's the first one to complain about the morality? The first one is Jacob himself. At the end of the story, Jacob says, thereupon Jacob said to Simon and Levi, you have troubled me to discredit me among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and among the Perizzites, and I am a few in number, and they will gather against me and attack me, and I and my household will be destroyed. So Jacob says, this is a terrible move politically. Now, all the neighbors are all the neighboring tribes are going to gather, and they are going to try to take revenge and kill me because two of my sons killed the entire city. By the way, there's a joke. It's not a joke. I forget who said this, but I think he was an ambassador. Some Israeli politician said like this. He said, story of Shimon and Levi. He says the story of Shimon and Levi is that Shimon and Levi, before they kill the whole city, they say all males have to circumcise. So the question is, why they want them to circumcise? So the simple interpretation is they want to be them weak. When they're weak on the third day after the circumcision, they're weak, they're vulnerable, then they kill everybody out. The joke is because they were afraid that if they kill the whole city, the UN will retaliate, or the nations of the world will retaliate. But now that all the people circumcised, so they just kill Jews, so nobody cares. That was the joke. It's not a funny joke, but it's a joke. But in any case, what's the concluding verse of that story? So the father, in verse 30, father tells the brothers, how can you do this? Now all the people are going to want to kill us. What do they say? And they say, shall we make our sister like a harlot? And that's the end of the story. In other words, we have to defend our sister. Okay, let's go back to the beginning of the story. That Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had born to Jacob, went out to look about among the daughters of the land. What does it say in this verse? We have a lot of description of Dinah. What doesn't it say? It doesn't say she's the daughter of Jacob. I mean, she is indirectly. Dinah is attributed to Leah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had born to Jacob. Leah has bore her to Jacob, but it's not Jacob directly. So what am I saying? One way to read the story, even though it's very sad, but I don't know if it's accurate, but one way to read the story is at least from the perspective of Shimon and Levi. Shimon and Levi feel that Jacob is not defending Dinah, or is not as upset. Well, he was upset. He's not defending Dinah as his. If Dinah was the daughter of Rachel, he would care more. That's what they feel. Whether it's true or not is another story, but that's how they feel. And that's why the Torah keeps emphasizing that Dinah is the daughter of Leah. And when it talks about the two brothers, when they go to kill the whole city, what does it say? Let's find the verse here. Now it came to pass in the third day when they were in pain that Jacob's two sons, Simon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, right? Of course, they're Dinah's brothers. We know they're Dinah's brothers. Yeah, but they felt that nobody else is standing up for her to protection. Remember, it's not just revenge, it's also protection, because you may not realize this, but she was still abducted by the prince and his king and the father, who's the ruler of the region. So they kill out the whole city so they can go in and redeem their sister. But in any case, what I'm trying to get at here is it's possible that story plays into this story. In other words, there's an underlying tension where the children of Leah feel that Jacob doesn't really care about them because he just cares about the sons of Rachel. And this is part of the trauma that's passed on from the previous generation, and it plays out in this story as well. Now, everything I said in the last 5 minutes could be true, could be not true. I'm putting it out here. Take it or leave it. Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi. I mean, I was bothered the most by the Levi being a troublemaker, because he turned up to be a head of the very spiritual tribe.
Yeah, but first of all, we know his history about he killed out the whole city, right? So we know that. We also know that at the end of his father's life, at the end of Jacob's life, when he curses when he blesses all of his sons, he does not bless Shimon and Levi. Instead, he curses them. And he says, because you killed the city, with their sword, they killed a man, meaning men. And then it says, with their wrath, they killed a man. With their will, they uprooted an ox. And the commentaries say an ox is Joseph, because when he blesses Joseph, he says Joseph is like a beautiful ox. In other words, yes, they were spiritual people, but sometimes spiritual people are zealots also. Now, zealotry, is it good or bad? So there's a cute Hasidic interpretation. I'm going all over the place. I'm sorry, I apologize. There's a cute Hasidic interpretation, and that is that when Jacob curses his sons, Shimon and Levi, he says, I'm going to spread them out amongst all of Israel. So they shouldn't have one place where they congregate. It could be too dangerous. That's why Levi did not get a portion in the land. Levi lived all over Israel because they served in the temple, but they were supported by the tithings. Every person would give 10% of the tithe to the tribe of Levi, of their produce to the tribe of Levi. But they were not in one place. They were spread out throughout Israel. So the Hasidic interpretation, not Chabad, but it's a Hasidic interpretation, is too much zealotry is not good, but you got to spread it out. Everyone has to have a little bit, right? So at some point you see injustice, you have to stand up for it. Does it mean you got to kill out the whole city? Okay, that's already another question. So that's the joke, not a joke. That's the cute idea. Just because it's cute doesn't mean it's wrong. but that's what it is. Okay, where are we going with this? Oh, so now we know why the rabbis say Shimon and Levi. That's a technical thing, but we know the history now. There is tension in this family. There's the old Leah, the older sister, who Jacob married first against his will. He was tricked into her, remember from last week. She has 6 sons, and those 6 sons feel like they're second-class citizens. And here, the father is honoring Joseph, and not just honoring, but flaunting that. He makes a colored tunic, a colored garment, sort of to broadcast to everybody how he favors one son. And you're not supposed to do that. Talmud says you shouldn't make any difference between your children. You treat them all equally, because look what happened to Jacob. He just spent a little bit more money on Jacob's coat, on Joseph's coat than the other coats, and look how much trouble he got into. So at least if you're going to favor one child, at least don't tell everybody about it. You shouldn't favor your children. My mother says she has all her 10 children. She loves them all the same. When we were kids, we didn't believe her, but at least that was the story she told us. At least she tried. But in any case, why am I saying this? I'm saying so that now this is the background. Now Joseph starts dreaming, and what's dreaming? Everybody's bowing to me. First, we're all binding bundles in the field. Let's read it inside. But let's talk a little bit about what I want to do today. I think we'll spend a minute or two, 5 minutes on Joseph's dreams. We'll talk a little bit about the story of Judah and Tamar, which we didn't talk about for a while. And then we're going to go to the end of the story, which is the dreams of the butler and the baker, and why Joseph interprets it the way he does, one positive, one negative. And Vicky's question is, why did Joseph translate it in the negative? Considering the Talmudic statements that we're going to address briefly, that a lot of the dream is based on, the meaning of the dream is based on the interpreter. That's a Talmudic idea. We're going to try to look at this story in light of that principle. So we have a lot of work to do, honestly. Where are we going? Okay. Summaries, Torah reading. Okay, so this is the story. His brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, verse 4. So they hated him, and they could not speak with him peacefully. Now, is that good or bad? It's not so clear. The rabbis say it's a good thing. It's a good thing that they were not dishonest, that they didn't like him and they didn't talk to him. They didn't hide their animosity, and that's supposed to be a good thing, because they at least they were honest. But other people say not talking is worse, because when you don't talk to each other, then everybody is sort of plotting and thinking about how the other person hates them, and it just exaggerates whatever's going on. And therefore they say, yes, hiding their animosity would be wrong, but not talking is even worse. What they should have done, they should have confronted him and spoke to him, which is what the Torah says. Torah says you can't keep a grudge. If you feel somebody's wronged you or is doing something wrong to you, you should actually speak to them. In any case, so they came, so the brothers could not speak to him. Joseph dreamt a dream and told his brothers, and they continued to hate him. And he said to them, listen now to this dream which I have dreamt. Behold, we are binding sheaves in the midst of the field. And behold, my sheaf arose and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves encircled it and prostrated themselves to my sheaf. Now, what do you think the brothers are going to say? You have this little kid, he's annoying, he's arrogant, and he comes to you in the morning at the breakfast table, and he says, you know what I dreamt? They were all working in the field, and you all bow down to and your sheaves bow down to my sheaf. So they're like enraged. So his brother said to him, will you reign over us, or will you govern us? And they continued further to hate him on account of his dreams and on account of his words. Not the best translation, in my opinion. Vayesifu, not continued. Lehosif is to add. Their hate increased because of his dreams and because of his words. I guess the words that came along with the dream. Let's see how Archibald translates these words. Vayesifu, Archibald page 201. And they hated him even more. That's a little bit better. Yeah. Continued further doesn't imply increase. Okay. Now, that wasn't enough. You have another dream. And he again dreamt another dream, and he related it to his brothers. And he said, behold, I have dreamt another dream, and behold, the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars were prostrating themselves to me. And he told it to his father and his brothers. Now he told it to his father. Why his father? I don't know. My guess is, based on what we discussed yesterday, all of a sudden here, the first dream was just the brothers. Here, maybe the father's involved too, because sun and the moon and 11 stars. 11 stars is easy. He's got 11 brothers, but maybe the sun and moon is father and mother. So he goes and tells this to his father and to his brothers. His father rebuked him and said to him, what is this dream that you have dreamt? Will we come, your mother and your brother, to prostrate ourselves to you to the ground? So his brothers envied him, but his father awaited the matter. In other words, as we mentioned yesterday, his father anticipated, his father wanted it to happen. Of course, his father wanted that his son should at least waited. Rashi says anticipated, but at least waited. In other words, he to the brothers, it appeared as if he's discrediting the dream, but he himself believed in the dream. Okay, so what's happening here? Why is Joseph dreaming this? Why is he telling it to his brothers? Should he have told them? Should he not have told them? There's all kinds of ways we can think about this. Let's start with the end. Let's start with why he told it to his brothers. So why he told it to his brothers, simply meaning, so the simple interpretation is because he's a little bit immature. And when Rashi says he was 17 years old, in the beginning of the story, the verse says, these are the generations of Jacob. When Joseph was 17 years old, being a shepherd, he was with his brothers with the flocks, and he was a lad. He was a lad. Why do I have to say he's a lad? We know he's 17 years old. What does a na'ar mean? So let's see what Rashi says. Rashi says that I think, he behaved childishly, fixing his ear and touching up his eyes so that he would appear handsome. I guess it's considered immature to be involved in vanity. So he's fixing his ear, and he's touching up his eyes. Okay, the bottom line is this: he's immature. That's what that Rashi is trying to say. But he's 17 years old, but he's immature, and he's just into himself, grooming himself. Okay, so that could be a reason. So why is he running to his brothers and telling them that I had these dreams? Because he's immature. He doesn't realize that it's going to make them hate him. Okay, that's one interpretation. But then you have other interpretations which touch upon what Vicky said. And in the Talmud basically says that, again, I'm not sure how far to take this, but at least in some cases, the Talmud basically says that the value, the meaning of a dream follows the interpreter. And there are all kinds of funny stories how the same interpreter would interpret the dreams. And dream interpretation was big business back then. So before you had psychologists or shrinks or people to figure out what's going on in your subconscious, people understood that the dream, what you dream about, could be an insight to your subconscious, even though they didn't use the word, they didn't think about it in terms of subconscious, but they figured out there's some knowledge to be gained from what you dream. So they would go to the dream interpreters, and there's all kinds of funny stories in the Talmud, Tractate Brachot. Some of them are very, very interesting, to say the least, about certain people, certain interpreters, that based on how much you paid them, that's how they would interpret it. If you only pay them a little bit, you'd get a bad interpretation. If you paid a lot, you'd get a good interpretation. And there's all kinds of funny stories about that. In any case, some people say he's going to his brothers because he wants his brothers to interpret it for him. And he's sort of giving them the ability to explain what it means. They, because of their hate, they all of a sudden think the worst of him. And they think, oh, are you telling us that you want to be king over us? What do you say king? It doesn't say king, it says bow. Bow doesn't have to be king. But that's what they say. They say, Hamalach timloch aleinu, will you want to be king over us? Hamashol, you want to reign over us? And they hate him even more. Turns out they gave that interpretation. His interpretation may have been more neutral. So that's one idea of thinking about why he's bringing it to them. Okay, but let's go back a little bit, and I say this every year. I'm going to say something in the pshat, in the simple meaning, and something about the mystical spiritual idea. And then hopefully we can keep that in 5 minutes, then we can move on to other stories. So if you look at the two dreams, now next week we're also going to have two dreams. Pharaoh has two dreams next week. When Joseph interprets the dreams to Pharaoh next week, he says like this. He says, you know why you had two dreams? Because the fact that it was repeated is because God wants the matter to come quickly. In other words, he basically says there's going to be 7 years of famine and 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine. He says this is beginning right now. That's what Joseph says. So in other words, he says the reason why a dream is seen double because God is making it, is hastening the matter to happen. Okay, that's wonderful. The only problem is that begs the question, why is it that in our parsha, Joseph has 2 dreams? Now, it's not to make the thing happen quickly, because the thing did not happen quickly. Joseph did not become a king until he was 30 years old. At this point, he's 17. And Joseph, the brothers don't bow to him until at least 7 years after that, to the years of the famine. So then that begs the question, why are we saying, so it's at least 17 years, at least 17 years. Am I doing the math correctly? It's more like 20 years, because it's also the beginning of the family didn't have to come. At least 20 years later. So why do we have the dream twice? Why does Joseph have the dream twice? So I'll start with the pshat, simple meaning. And the simple meaning, I think this is absolutely brilliant. And I think I read this from the Barbanel, who says like this, it's not the same dream. Not the same dream. First of all, you have the sun and the moon, but it's not the same dream. Simply, it's the same idea. Same idea is that the brothers and the family will bow to him because he's the king, but it's not the same dream. And the main difference that we'll start from is that if you look at verse 7, it says that the sheaves were all binding sheaves in the midst of the field. And behold, my sheaf arose and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves encircled it and prostrated themselves to my sheaf. It's not that their grain bowed to Joseph. Their grain bowed to Joseph's grain. Not to Joseph, but to Joseph's grain. Contrast that to verse 9, his second dream. Behold, I have dreamt another dream, and behold, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were prostrating themselves to me, not to my star, right? So in the first dream, it says that their grain bows to Joseph's grain. In the second dream, it says that their stars bow not to Joseph's star, but to Joseph himself. And that leads the Barbanel to say something brilliant, which is, it's 2 different events. And that's why it's not repetitious. And therefore, the fact that it happened twice doesn't mean it's happening immediately, because that's only if the same theme has been repeated. This is not repetitious. It's 2 separate dreams. The first dream is when they bow to him without knowing it's him. He was disguised as, he was the king of the viceroy of Egypt. He was the second in command of Egypt. But they didn't know it's Joseph. Why are they bowing to him? Because they want grain. So they're coming to him, bowing to his grain, not to him. They have no idea who he is. The second dream is talking about after he reveals his identity to them, which we'll read about in 2 weeks. And then they come to bow, also the father and also the stepmother. So that is, they bow to me because they know exactly who he is. And there's no grain because they're not bowing for the grain. So in that sense, it's 2 different dreams, and that's why there's no question why it didn't happen immediately. Okay, fine. We took care of the technical problem. Now we're going to go a little to the mysticism. And the mysticism says, Joseph, now we're going to talk about the mysticism a little bit. And the mysticism says that binding the sheaves in the field represents not just what Joseph's dreams, but it represents the service of the Jew in this world. And there's all kinds of ways of looking at this. We're not going to get into all of that. I'm just going to say one thing. Point here is that from the Hasidic interpretation, it is a double dream. But the point of this dream is, it's still one dream, but it's a double dream, but it's one dream, but it's 2 separate dreams. What do I mean? What we see about Joseph's dreams is that, first of all, you start with the earth and you go to heaven. I'm going to compare that to Pharaoh's dreams next week. Next week, we read about Pharaoh's dreams. The first dreams is about 7 fat cows and 7 skinny cows. The second dream is about 7 grains, healthy grains of wheat, and then 7 unhealthy grains of wheat. So it's really a descent. It goes from a higher form of life to a lower form of life. It goes from animal kingdom to the vegetable kingdom. It goes down. It's a downgrade. that represents unholiness going downward. With Joseph, we start with grain, physical things on earth, and we move to stars in the heaven. That represents going upward. Because Joseph's dream represents holiness, and there we have to increase, not decrease. It's like Hanukkah. You know the famous disagreement in Shammai. Well, I'm not going to say it's famous, but some people know the disagreement of how many candles to light on the Hanukkah, and we obviously add a light because we follow the opinion of Hillel. But Shammai says you start with 8 candles on day 1, and then you go to 7 candles on day 2, etc. And you keep decreasing. That's the point. But the law is that we follow Hillel. Ma'alin b'kodesh, you increase in holiness. In all matters of holiness, you have to increase. So you start with day 1, then you go to day 2, and 2 you add 2, etc. So here we're starting with earth, and we're going to heaven. We start with the grain on earth, and we go to heaven. What does that mean? That means, in a deeper interpretation, both of these dreams are happening together. In other words, for a Jew, when a Jew is in this world, when he's binding bundles of grain, which is a metaphor for working in the physical world, whatever you're achieving in the physical world, that's only one plane of his existence. Simultaneously, he's also in heaven because there's a spiritual purpose for what he's doing. There's an intention to serve God. And therefore, you ask the Jew, where are you? Are you in the grain? Are you in the field? Are you in the field collecting grain and binding bundles of grain? Or are you in heaven in the realm of the stars and the sun and the moon? And the answer is both. Because the whole idea of being Jewish is to connect to heaven. And if we had time about this, we discussed about this. One who teaches his brothers how to do that, how to be in heaven and earth at the same place, at the same time. In other words, Joseph is the one who teaches his brothers how to do both, how to be in heaven and earth at the same time. As we mentioned yesterday, that all the brothers, as well as patriarchs, were shepherds. And when you're a shepherd, you raise cattle for a living. You're really outside of society. Joseph is the first one who's deeply involved within society, as we see later when he runs the entire economy of Egypt, which is the superpower of the world, the ancient world. So he's basically running the economy of the world, and he's Jewish, and he remains loyal to his teachings of monotheism and morality, as we see in this story and other stories. So the point here is Joseph can be in 2 places at once. He can be on earth, his feet can be on earth, but he's still planted in heaven. Reminds me of this of the ladder of Joseph of Jacob. So Joseph is the one who sees that, and Joseph is the one who shows his brothers how to do that. And maybe that's why he's the leader. Maybe that's why Jacob wants him to lead, because he has to show the Jews the example of being able to be in both places at once, both in the field and in heavens at the same time. How do you do that? When whatever you're doing in the physical world has a spiritual purpose and a spiritual reason and a spiritual goal, then you are not in the earth, you're in the earth and in heaven simultaneously. Okay, that's a little bit about the dreams. Of course, there's a lot more to say. Okay, you know what? We're already in the dreams. Let's go to the end of the parsha, talk about the end, those dreams, and maybe we'll come back and do a little bit of Judah and Tamar. But let's start with the end of the dreams. Now, part of the question is, why do we get the dreams of the baker and the butler? Why is it so detailed? It doesn't really matter for the plots to know the exact details of the dream. I know it's interesting, but we really need to advance the plot is basically Joseph was in prison with 2 people, with 2 ministers of Pharaoh. They had dreams. He interpreted their dreams, and his interpretation became true. You could even say that the interpretation was that in 3 days, one will be killed and one will be released in prison. The intricacy of the description of both these dreams is telling. There's just a lot of words, a lot of verses. And that tries to get the commentaries, both the Medrash and the later commentaries and the modern commentaries, to try to figure out what's the additional meaning that we're getting from these stories? And we talk about some of these points that I'm going to say here, I said in the past, but I'm going to try to be brief. So I'm turning to the end of the parsha. Genesis chapter 40. If you have an art scroll, it would be on bottom of page 217, and then 219, etc. Okay, came to pass after these events. So Joseph was sold to Egypt, and he was bought by the Pharaoh's minister. As we said, his wife accused Joseph of trying to rape her, and he's put in prison. So now he's in a pit as a slave in a pit. So it's like the lowest place you can be. In any case, there together with him, there's after Pharaoh became incensed at his two chamberlains, at the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. And he placed them in prison at the house of the chief of the slaughterers, into the prison, a place where Joseph was imprisoned. Okay, I'm going to verse 5. Now both of them dreamt a dream, each one of his dream on the same night, each man according to his interpretation of his dream, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in prison. Okay, Joseph came to them in the morning and saw them, and behold, they were troubled. And he asked Pharaoh's chamberlains, who were with him in the prison in his master's house, saying, "Why are your faces sad today? Why are you so sad?" Which is an absolutely unbelievable statement. You're in prison. What do you mean, why you're so sad? And why isn't Joseph sad? And why isn't Joseph sad? And they're stopping him from trying to figure out why other people are sad, right? So this is part of the story. Part of the story is that Joseph, wherever he is, he's uplifting others. In other words, his spirit is not really imprisoned. He transcends the self. First of all, he transcends his circumstances. He's upbeat. And not only is he upbeat, but he also wants other people to be upbeat, which is an unbelievable part of the story. In any case, they tell to him and they say, "We have dreamt a dream," and there was no interpreter for it. Joseph said to them, don't interpretations belong to God? Tell them to me now. Okay, now we have the story. You ready? Ready for details? Here we go. Verse 9. So the chief cupbearer related his dream to Joseph, and he said to him, "In my dream, behold, a vine is before me. And on the vine there were three tendrils, and it seems to be blossoming, and its buds came out. Then its clusters ripened into grapes. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand. And I took the grapes and squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I placed the cup on Pharaoh's palm." Joseph said to him, "This is the meaning of three tendrils are 3 days. In another 3 days, Pharaoh will number you, meaning will remember you with the other officers, and he will restore you to your position, and you will place Pharaoh's cup into his hand according to your previous custom when you were the cupbearer." Beautiful. And then he says, "But remember me when things go well with you, and please do me a favor and mention me to Pharaoh, and you will get me out of this house." Okay, and because he says, I'm here unjustly. "For I was stolen from the land of the Hebrews, and here too I have done nothing for which they have put me into the dungeon." Okay, verse 16. Now the chief baker saw that he had interpreted well. So he said to Joseph, "Me too. My dream, behold, there were 3 wicker baskets on my head." He says, "Gamani b'chalemi," me too, I also dreamt. He wants to include himself with the other one, went so well. And then he says, verse 17, this is the whole dream. And in the topmost basket were all kinds of Pharaoh's food, the work of a baker, and the birds were eating from the basket atop my head. And Joseph replied and said, "This is the meaning. The 3 baskets represent 3 days. In another 3 days, Pharaoh will remove your head from you and hang you on the gallows, and the birds will eat your flesh off you." Wow, what so inspiring. And that's exactly what happened. And then finally, that's what happened. The final verse of the parsha. But the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, and he forgot him. So we would expect at this point, things are going good for Joseph. Look, he's got connections with the ministers of Pharaoh, and one of them, he helped them, and that person promised to remind Pharaoh about him, but forget it. He forgot. We go to sleep after this parsha, we're done. We're at a dead end again. There's no place for us to see how the plot would advance. And indeed, the plot advances from something, I guess, miraculous that the Pharaoh dreams, but it doesn't come from the Sar HaMashkim, it doesn't come from the cupbearer. Okay, so Vicky wants to know, how does Joseph know that this is going to happen, right? Okay, 3 baskets, 3 days we get. There was three tendrils of the 3 vines that we understand is 3 days. But how do you get to that point where the second guy is going to be dead? Doesn't say that.
My question was more about Joseph being so compassionate and so trying to help his prison mates, why did he interpret it that way?
So Joseph felt that, I don't know the answer to your question. Joseph felt that this is a form of prophecy, and therefore he has to try to be as loyal as possible to the interpretation, to what he's seeing. Now, it could be that once I give my interpretation, it could be we can try to be a little bit flexible about this. But let's first put forth the interpretation. Where does Joseph see the difference? So it's not 100% clear. You could say prophecy, God told it to him. Okay, you could say that. Joseph got the interpretation from God, from divine intuition. Or you could say, no, he just read the facts, he read the story, he read the dreams, and he interpreted from the dreams themselves. And some people say the big difference is, okay, the first dream is clear. The first dream, it says he's actually giving the wine to Pharaoh. Okay, but the big difference is in verse 11. You compare verse 11 to verse 17. And verse 11, the first dream, this guy is active. The cupbearer is active. He's doing things, right? So the dream is, so you have 3 tendrils, and it seemed to be blossoming, and its buds came out. Then its clusters ripened into grapes. He's not active, right? So you have 3 vines that they come and they give forth grapes. But then verse 11, the guy is active. Pharaoh's cup was in his hand, and I took the grapes and squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I placed the cup on Pharaoh's palm. So he's taking the grapes, making wine, putting it and offering it to Pharaoh. What happens in the second dream? What is our gentleman, our good friend, the baker, doing? The answer is absolutely nothing. What does he say? So he says, me too, in my dream, behold, there were 3 wicker baskets on my head. And in the topmost basket were all kinds of Pharaoh's food, the work of a baker, not even my work, the work of a baker. And birds were eating them from the basket atop my head. Okay, so what is he doing? The answer is nothing. Okay, nothing is a sign of death. It's not a sign of life. If you want change, if you want movement, if you want growth, you have to take action. You can't be passive. You can't expect things to happen for you. You have to take a first step. Now, you may not realize how your first step is going to solve the problem, but at least you have to do something. You can't just sit and wait for things to happen. You have to take the step. You have to reach out, and that's what it seems that Joseph is sensing within these dreams. So the first dream is clear that he's being put back on his post. But the second dream, not only is Pharaoh not in the picture, but this guy is not doing anything. And so those are the dreams. Now, Joseph is very harsh. Now, Vicky says, how come? I don't know. Maybe Joseph is basically saying, unless you shape up, this is what's going to happen. I don't know. If you want to start going those ways, that's not what the verse says. It's pretty sure that Joseph is pretty direct, and that Joseph is pretty direct about what's going to happen. So I don't know if I want to go there. I think I'm moving already too far away from the literal text. But I think that the dreams themselves tell you about the attitude of the people. And if this guy saw there's nothing to do, that's why he dreamt it. Joseph says, okay, there's nothing to do. Right? Whereas the first guy is running around and being active and taking steps. Now, this is not the only reason why we have the detailed description. I said this in the past, but we'll say it next year. The big shift is objects represent time. We spoke about that in the past. I'll say now briefly. We'll leave it for another time. But the bottom line is Joseph needs to have these dreams. Joseph needs to be able. This is sort of an easy interpretation, because Pharaoh's dreams are 3 days away. Pharaoh's birthday party. That's what it says. Pharaoh had a birthday party. He says, right? He says, it says it, verse 20. Now it came about on the 3rd day, Pharaoh's birthday. Okay, so that was a relatively easy dream to interpret in the most important part, which is that in a dream, an object could represent time. 3 baskets, 3 days, 3 tendrils, 3 days. What's 3 days? Everyone knew Pharaoh's birthday. So that was the easy one. Once Joseph gets that, when it comes to Pharaoh's dreams and he sees objects, Joseph has the insight to say objects means time, 7 cows, 7 years. Nobody else wants to say that for various reasons. But in ancient Egypt, the last thing you would go to, you would never interpret a dream based on time. You would always say object represents an object or an event or an occurrence. You would never say it means time, because multiple reasons, but part of the reason is also because time can be, because if you peg a time, it can be disproved. And you want to be vague, right? So if I give an interpretation every day, I turn on the internet, oh, there's going to be a stock market crash. Oh, the stocks are going to go up. Well, if I knew the exact timing, I would be a billionaire. So it's very easy to make predictions. It's very hard to get the timing right. So nobody's ever going to interpret a dream based on timing. Joseph does, both in this story and in the next story. But here's an easy one, because here Pharaoh's birthday is 3 days away. So in other words, this story is helping him understand that is shaping his interpretation of next story, but also I would say it also teaches him how to be active. And he says, please remind Pharaoh of me. Now I have to be honest that the sages said that was a bad idea. Someone on the level of Joseph, when he felt all that divine providence, he should have relied on Joseph. That's what the sages say. But the simple meaning, the pshat, is that he is trying. He's making an effort. He is speaking to the cupbearer and saying, speak to Pharaoh on my behalf, right? So he's not passively wallowing in his sorrow, but he's taking steps, whatever is possible, to change and shift the situation and make some change. Going back as to the point where he's actually reaching out to the ministers who are sad. That's him making waves, right? And there are philosophies about this that talk about this, that if you don't know, was I listening to? Listening to a guy, an Israeli general, and he's a philosopher, and talks about philosophy, but through the angle of warfare. And he basically says that one of the theories is that when things are static, you start the enterprise, you start the war, whatever it's going to start, things are static. You have to move. You have to change. Once you move, the dynamic changes. Once the dynamic changes, then you could figure out what you want to do. But stagnation is never the solution. And your job is to start change. And even though you're not exactly sure how that change is going to get you to your final destination, but that's what you need to do instead of being stagnant. And these are sort of theories of a battle, of theories of war. This is what it reminds me of. He's running around making waves, reaching out to people, and ultimately that's what we see in the cupbearer's dream as well. Okay.
Rabbi, I have a question.
Go ahead.
What are the standard interpretations of the dream? How the other wise guys interpret it?
So that's a good question. That's a good term. I don't know. I know next parsha. Next parsha, when it comes to Pharaoh's dreams, the sages tell us what the alternative dreams were. The verse doesn't say it, but the sages say it. And because the problem is that Joseph's interpretation, next parsha, seems very straightforward. 7 fat years eating seven fat cows, then 7 skinny cows eating the fat cows. Okay, they emerged from the Nile, which is the source of the economy of Egypt, of the fertility of the land. So it's easy. The 7 years of famine are going to follow the years of plenty. It seems like a very easy interpretation. And what's shocking is, first of all, that nobody else can think of it. And number 2 is that Pharaoh is so impressed, he tells Joseph, you're such a brilliant guy. Here, take the keys of the economy. You're going to become the minister, you're going to become the vice president because you came up with this brilliant idea. It's not so brilliant, it looks straightforward. So Rashi, therefore, has to say, what was everybody else saying? So then they say like this, they say, you're going to have 7 daughters and 7 daughters are going to die. You're going to conquer 7 cities and then you're going to lose 7 cities. You'll win 7 wars, you lose 7 wars. So over there, what you see, again, I don't know much about it. I'm not an expert in ancient Egypt. I'm sure this information is out there. I'm sure you can find this. But I'm saying from the perspective of at least the way the sages read the story, it seems to me that the premise was an object represents an object. Because the worst thing you would do is say time. And that's why Joseph has the audacity to come and say there's 7 years and 7 years. And you know what? Not there's going to be some time. The 7 years are starting right now because you had 2 dreams, because the same dream happened with the cows and with the grain. So the clock is starting to tick right now. Whoa. Someone walks into your office and puts his entire reputation right down with the time, with the way that to disprove it, you're impressed. But I see here that so some people want to say that that's the big shift. And the big shift from object to time, which it's not, you don't have to be a genius to say it, but nobody would say it. Nobody would say it. That's not what they teach in interpretation school. So going back to this interpretation, you could say whatever you want. You could say you're gonna come and you're gonna say you're gonna get it. You're gonna invent 3 different types of wine, and Pharaoh's gonna love it so much, and he's gonna restore you because you came up with 3 recipes for wine. Okay, that's objects, right? That's objects. That's not time. And then it's a very safe interpretation because you can never be disproven, at least not till you get killed. But I'm just saying, if it didn't happen today, I'll say, oh, it didn't happen yet. It's gonna happen next week. Right? Like Joseph's interpretation. Joseph's running around for 20 years with his dreams, right?
What's interesting to me,
go ahead.
What's interesting to me, because it's a modern view of space and time. And sometimes people say it's the same, actually.
Right.
So it's interesting that we are talking about it so long ago.
Yeah. And I always say that in biblical Hebrew, the same word could mean space and time. So the word olam is world, but olam can mean cosmos, in other words, the entire universe. And olam also means forever. Olam, forever. So all of time and all of space is encompassed in the same word, which is fascinating.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, but it's true. I never thought about it in this context that the division between an object and time is 2 different realms. You would never think to connect it.
But not anymore.
And Joseph says we're connecting it. And I think that he would be a little afraid to do it in the next story, even though he had his intuition, but he'd be a little bit afraid to do it unless he had an easy case over here. Here, there's an easy case, stakes are low, there's a clear event 3 days away. You could see how this is an easy case where, again, what would be the price of failure? Wouldn't be so terrible. Price of failure to Pharaoh to tell him something is going to happen exactly in 7 years, for 7 years. The price of failure to Pharaoh is obviously much greater. So I think that here, that's why we have all the details in the dream, because it's showing us how he gets to his, of course, it's Hashem's help, and of course it's divinely inspired, but Hashem leads him to it. And he doesn't get that insight immediately. He had an easy one. He figured out how to navigate. He tested his theory, so to speak. He tested his theory that object could be time, and like I said, it was easy. It's relatively easy to come to it because of that. Like today, I think North Korea, the holiday, the national holiday is the birthday of the dictator. Right? In every dictatorship, the birthday is the most important day of the year. Everyone knows when it's 3 days before the birthday. All the commercials and television are all talking about 3 days to the Pharaoh's birthday. So in the prison, they were also talking about 3 days. All you've been hearing, 3 days left to the party. And then you got 2 dreams with 3 objects. So Joseph is like, okay, this one's easy. And it's easy.
It was also proven.
I'm sorry?
It was also a proven case because it was proven.
Yeah, also easy to prove. Yeah, once you have a time, you can prove it, unless you're saying 30 years. But this was easy. It was right here in your face, and it's provable immediately. Right.
It was proven more than the Pharaoh's dream.
Yes, yeah. Pharaoh's dream, it's hard to, you need at least 8 years. In other words, you really need 14 years. But Pharaoh's dream is a much longer period.
Is there any other story about the dreams and numbers in Torah?
So you have dreams, but not in the sense of, you have the dream like last week of the dream of the angels going up and down. But those dreams, and in that parsha also, before he goes back, he tells his wives, before he wants to go back to Israel, he tells his wife, I'm dreaming, and in my dream I see different types of sheep, which is a very strange dream. Why is he dreaming about sheep? Some people say it's negative, but those dreams, it's not time bound. So Jacob it's not time bound. Joseph is the first one to make that connection. And other than that, are there any dreams in the book of? Not really. Most of the dreams are in the book of Genesis, which has some Kabbalah too. The Kabbalah talks about that exile is like a dream. So Joseph being in Egypt is like a dream. because the verse says, I'll just be brief and we'll conclude with this point. The verse says, when God brings back the captivity of Zion from King David's book of Psalms, B'shuv Hashem et Shivat Zion, we say it every Shabbat before the grace after meals. When God brings us back to Israel, Hayinu Kechalim will be as if we have dreamt. In other words, when you wake up in the morning, you say, when the exile is over, we look back at exile and say it was like a dream. What does it mean it was like a dream? So the Kabbalists say exile is a dream. Exile is a dream. And that's why Joseph, this whole story, Joseph gets dreams. The Egyptian exile happens through a series of dreams, 3 series of dreams. Joseph's dreams, Joseph's dreams, the baker and the butler, and Pharaoh's dreams. Seems like it's helping Joseph, but it's helping Joseph. And on the other hand, it's bringing the Jews to Egypt. So exile happens through dreams because mystically speaking, exile is a dream. What's a dream? A dream is things where things are illogical. Cause and effect doesn't really work. So you can have 2 opposites taking place, that things that really can't coexist. And in exile, things can't coexist. It's not natural. We don't belong outside of Israel, et cetera, et cetera. Mystically speaking, spiritual exile means that we have things coexisting. Our love to God and our love to materialism could coexist. That's a dream. What do you love? Do you love spirituality or do you love a piece of steak? Which one do you love? So in a dream state, you love both. Now, we're not saying any of them is wrong. We're not saying you're disingenuous. We're not saying the love to God is fake. No, it's a dream. And in dreams, opposites coexist. When Mashiach comes, we wake up from the dream. And what do we discover? That they're not opposites. We're not attracted to the materialism for its own sake. We're attracted to materialism because of the spark of God that's within it. But that's redemption. That's when you see, that's when the concealment is gone. So mystically speaking, dreams happen in the second half of the book of Genesis because that's where exile occurs. And dream is this sort of in-between time. You're not in the depth of the exile because then there's no revelation at all. You don't understand anything. But when the exile is coming about, you're getting some insight, but it's not clear it's in dreamlike form. So it's sort of an in-between state. You have some information, but it's not as clear as it should be. Certainly not as clear as prophecy. But on the other hand, you're getting some indication from above. So there's a lot to talk about dreams and mysticism and the exile, but unfortunately, we ran out of time, 11:06. Sorry for going late. Come back next year, same time, same place, in good health, and the journey will continue.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.